Welcome back to the reading of the Enchanted Tree, How It All Began. We're continuing with chapter 9 and 10, the last video in this book.
Thomas patted her on the shoulder several times and repeated his question. Finally, Emily broke from her trance and looked at Thomas. Shakespeare wrote about these fairies. A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's my favourite play. I can't believe that they are here, she told Thomas, then looked over at Oberon and smiled.
How are you, young lady?
He nodded to her. Fine, thank you, stammered Emily. But soon she got over her nerves and talked freely with her neighbours. Thomas and Henry couldn't understand a word they said to each other, so they turned their attention to Rodney. It wasn't long before the food arrived, and what a feast it was! Wholemeal breads and pastries with many kinds of cheeses and green salads were set before them. Honey was presented in bowls of flowers. Fresh milk was poured into acorn cups, and platters of orange leaves were piled high with fruit. Helpful Hob and her hobgoblins had worked hard for days preparing cakes and puddings laden with fresh cream and nuts. The guests all enjoyed the feast and talked happily amongst themselves. When they had all finished, the Trellwinds struck up a merry chord, and soon the fairy circles were full of dancers. At the other end of the clearing, some more entertainment began. First, the Dowager from Ireland demonstrated their excellent swordsmanship and hurling skills. Then the balancing Brownie brothers showed off their quick and nimble tricks, whilst a group of pixies tried to outdo each other in tumbling and other gymnastics. Queen Mab sat on her throne, watching all the festivities and talking to Henry. Her adoring elves were helping her to open some of her presents. One unwrapped, whilst the others made a note of the gift on a piece of paper. Gold and silver jewellery, hand-woven fabrics, new wands, glass ornaments, and precious stones made up all the gifts. Oh, not forgetting the necklace that Rosebud and her friends had made.
Top of the morning to your highness,
called out a leprechaun as he walked towards the throne. He was a pleasant-looking fellow, with a scraggly beard, upturned nose, and twinkling eyes. He wore a red jacket with silver buttons, brown breeches, black silver-buttoned shoes, and a high-crowned hat with 3 corners. Oh, Paddy O'Patrick, how is my favourite little Irishman? Are you enjoying the party? Cried the Queen, getting up to give him a hug.
Well, your majesty, I have myself a bit of a problem,
admitted Paddy. Queen Mab, alarmed at seeing the worried expression on his face, took him by the hand and begged him to explain.
Well, you see, I got you a very special present for your birthday. Trouble is, I buried it for safekeeping and now I can't remember where I put it.
Queen Mab breathed a sigh of relief. Oh, Paddy, is that all? I thought something terrible had happened.
But it has, your majesty. A pot of gold is very hard to come by,
said poor Paddy. Well, Queen Mab was thrilled to think Paddy had got her a pot of gold. A little disappointed that it was buried in her garden somewhere, but determined not to let that spoil her party. She looked up at the night sky and saw many stars glistening from their homes far away. The gnomes' lively music filled the air, mixed with the carefree laughter and happy chatter of her guests.
Wow! Awesome! Look at that!
Shouted Thomas, pointing up, high in the sky. Everyone stopped what they were doing, including the gnomes, and gazed in wonder at the night. Gosh! A rainbow at night!" exclaimed Emily. "This is incredible! How beautiful!" The rainbow seemed to come right through the trees and end on a mossy bank of cowslips near the Queen's throne. All of a sudden, Henry left the Queen's side, ran over to the bank, and started to dig frantically in the flowers. He ignored the children's cries of alarm and orders to stop immediately. They quickly ran over to him when he wouldn't stop.
What on earth are you doing, Henry?
exclaimed Thomas.
Here,
announced the triumphant dog, pulling a metal pot out of the ground with his teeth. He set it down at Paddy's feet.
There you go. Isn't there always a pot of gold at the end of the rainbow?
The Queen squealed with delight and clapped her hands. Yes, yes, you are right. Is that the one that you buried, Paddy? Paddy picked up the box and danced a jig around in a circle. Then he bowed and on bended knee knelt before the Queen.
Your Majesty,
he announced, handing her the richly decorated pot full of gold coins. Oh, Paddy, thank you so much. Oh, what a wonderful gift, said the pleased Queen, while walking back to her throne with the children, Henry smiling happily behind her.
Not so fast, Henry,
called out Paddy. And they all looked back in surprise. Chapter 10. The children and their dog turned around and walked back towards Paddy. Is there something wrong? Said Emily.
Well, as a matter of fact, there is.
Paddy was looking rather cross. Then he grinned an enormous grin. With that, he somersaulted upside down and, balancing on the point of his hat, spun himself around like a top, all the while laughing gleefully to himself. The children couldn't help laughing too at this extraordinary sight. Soon they attracted quite a crowd, who joined in with the laughter and danced and clapped wildly around the little leprechaun. What is all this fuss about? Shouted the Queen, and the crowd parted to let her near Paddy. Paddy stopped spinning and jumped the right way up.
Your Majesty,
he panted.
Have you forgotten that whomever finds a leprechaun's pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is granted 3 wishes?
The Queen gasped. The crowd gasped. The children gasped. And everyone looked at Henry. Of course, Paddy, of course, she answered. And Henry shall make those wishes, for he dug it up, said the Queen excitedly. Henry was as astonished as the children were, and everyone waited for him to speak. He glanced at Thomas, then at Emily.
Mabby, can I share those wishes? I'd really like to give one to each of my friends.
The Queen was delighted with the idea, and Emily was chosen first. What should she wish for? A pony? A toy shop of her very own? A new party dress? Oh, the possibilities were endless. Then she saw a cheeky glimmer in Paddy's eye, and without knowing it, blurted out, Actually, Your Highness, I wish that the big oak tree that fell over in our garden could stand back up again. Please, it's such a beautiful tree. Of course, my dear, smiled the Queen, rather surprised, and she nodded to Paddy. In return, Paddy pulled something out of his pocket and threw it into the air. A shower of sparkling dust swirled around the crowd and vanished into the night.
There you are, little girl,
winked Paddy.
And what for you now, Henry? Oh, that's easy. I like a brand new collar with a great big bone on it, please,
he answered in a hurry. Paddy delved into his pocket a second time, and this time, when he threw it into the air, the sparkling dust swirled around and around the anxious dog.
Wow, cool,
he shouted as the dust settled, revealing a fancy black leather collar with silver studs and a bone that tucked right underneath his chin.
My turn!
Yelled Thomas, jumping up and down impatiently.
I want to wish that we can come here again, that we can have adventures like this whenever we want to.
He looked at Queen Mab.
Please?
Paddy threw the last of the sparkling dust into the air, and to everyone's surprise, it swirled around Henry again. The Queen noticed the confused look on the children's faces. She leaned towards them. The way to our magical kingdom is through the old oak tree, which, thanks to Emily, is now standing in your garden once more. The key that unlocks the tree is kept inside the bone on Henry's collar. When the time comes, you'll know what to do, she whispered. And now, let's party on! She called to her guests, and turning around, she bumped straight into Rixie.
Hey, babe, not too late, am I?
He said, flashing his handsome smile and whisking her off to the dance floor. No, not at all, she smiled, blushing from cheek to cheek. Emily, Thomas, and Henry joined in the dancing until their feet hurt. The fairies were all so friendly and had many wondrous stories and secrets to tell. It was Emily who realised they ought to be heading home, and after much persuading, she got Thomas and Henry to follow her. They said goodbye to all their enchanting new friends, and Rose helped them to find the door again to get out. Once again, they stood in the coolness of the cavern, surrounded by doors. The silence whispered about them like singing fairy dust. Emily found her flashlight on the floor and switched it on to find the stairs, and they started to climb up in the darkness. At the top was another door, which they pushed open and ended up coming out of the tree trunk into their garden. The children and Henry stood on the grass and looked up at the big oak, standing where it always did. The door slammed shut behind them with an echoing crash.
Hey, you've turned back into your old clothes again. Guess the dress was only for the fairy fest after all,
said Thomas. Yes, I guess, answered Emily as she turned to look at Thomas's dog. But look at you, Henry. You still got your new collar.
Oof,
barked Henry as he ran ahead of the laughing children into the house. Oh, little do you know, dear children, of the fantastic adventures that await you. The end.
Thanks for joining us for How It All Began. Soon we'll have book 2 in the series in the same kind of video format, Pirates.
Bye-bye.